Hey friends, it is Lane with Tim's Nation. I am here today to talk to you a little bit about the Death Guard that I'm bringing into DJ today. I am running some Death Guard in Mortarions Hammer. So we've got the new codex, we've got the new rules, we've got new data sheets, new detachments, new enhancements, new stratagems. Most of the data sheets have had some kind of changes to them. We've got a few new things in the army. So very exciting time for Death Guard. There's a ton of possibility in this codex. There are probably a couple standout, data sheets and detachments, but there's a lot of good ones. And I think Mortarion's Hammer is a fun one. It's probably not the most powerful, not the strongest one, but there's a couple things I want to do with this. First of all, the detachment ability lets you pick two of your enemy's units at the start of the battle round and put them into contagion, or what we call now afflicted. They kind of changed the name a little bit, but now if you put something into contagion, it's considered afflicted. So we can pick two things and put them into affliction, and that's a big deal, obviously, for a vehicleist that's going to be doing a lot of long-range shooting, but also for our Deathshroud Terminators to get that 6-inch deep strike when they're going into an afflicted unit. So I'm going to use that to give my Deathshroud a little advantage for the deep strikes. And the second big thing I want to do with this is put a bunch of Plague Marines and a Land Raider, and then I'm going to use the stratagem that allows a vehicle to go through walls, and I'm going to have that Land Raider go through a big piece of terrain, move its 10 inches, disembark the Plague Marines. Are going to get out and charge. So it's kind of a hilarious little threat range for a Land Raider to Kool-Aid Man through a wall, and then let out the embarked unit there, and they can still charge because of Land Raider rules. So I don't know if any of the detachments or abilities that we've seen so far that allow vehicles and monsters to go through walls, I don't think there's been anything that's had a vehicle that has the ability to disembark and charge after it's moved. So that's kind of unique here, and I just want to do it. I've got a Death Guard Land Raider. That's what I want to do. And even though it's called Mortarion's Hammer, I'm not bringing Mortarion today. There are a ton of good units. There are a ton of fun things to play. There are a lot of great options. I'm excited to try a lot of different things. Really, Death Guard, it feels really deep right now. Again, there are obvious things that are going to float to the top as the best, but there's a lot of stuff, a lot of data sheets, a lot of attachments that are going to have really strong abilities that will be solid. I think the points are relatively fair. The good stuff is more expensive. Deathshroud Terminators are very good, but they are expensive. 300 points for a 6-man is a lot of points. So I think Death Guard are in a good spot. I don't anticipate them nerfing things a whole lot. I know people think it's kind of overpowered. I think a lot of things, there are ways to play around them. There can probably be some small nerfs here and there. If GW comes in with a heavy hand and just bumps points up on everything or nerfs abilities too much, it's not going to be fun. But I think it's going to take everybody by surprise a little bit for a month or so. But I think there are ways to play around a lot of the Death Guard stuff. I think the points are pretty solid. Maybe give a few points bumps to the things that are really good. But the codex is so deep that if they do bump some things, it's going to mean we'll use other things a lot more. If the fetid bloat drones with the heavy blight launchers go up a few points, we can just run them by fetid blight haulers because they got better. They're still only 90 points, so they're probably pretty great. Anyways, so let's go through the list that we're actually running today. I'm not doing a full codex review. I haven't studied all the detachments thoroughly. Really just, wanted to try this one just because I want to run a Land Raider through a wall and get some Plague Marines out and charge with them. So let's go through the actual list and see what we're actually playing today. All right, this is exactly 2,000 points of Death Guard in Mortarion's Hammer. To start things off, Mortarion's Hammer, it gives us its detachment ability is at the start of the battle round. Not the start of my turn, but at the start of the battle round. I pick two of my enemy's units. They have to be more than 12 inches away from any of my Death Guard units on the table. And I just put them into contagion, or what we call afflicted now. So this helps our vehicles with their long-range shooting and that their targets can be afflicted, giving them the neg-1 toughness and either the neg-1 armor or the neg-1 weapon skill, ballistic skill, that sort of thing. So if I have a shooting, I'm worried about DJ's Forge Fiends, I can put them into affliction. And even if I don't get a chance to go at them to attack them, I can choose I'll probably be choosing the plague that makes them neg-1 to hit. And that may have a solid effect on reducing their damage output. So But yeah, that's now for actual characters here. I'm running a 10-man brick of Plague Marines. I'm changing them what I usually do them, that I'm putting more shooting into that Plague Marine unit, but I am still running the Biologist Putrefier and the Foul Blight Spawn. I know in some of the other detachments, especially the Champions of Contagion detachment, there are more flexible things because they have stratagems that do what these characters do, like give you a fight first or give you lethals, critting on 5s. You have the option of taking one or two of these guys out and swapping in some of the other ones. I know the Malignant Plaguecaster is looking really good, giving his unit sustained, and obviously paired with the Biologist Putrefier, that critting on 5s would be huge. Well, lethals and sustained on 5-ups is a big deal. But yeah, for today, I'm going to run the same old standbys because they are still real good, and they got some rules changes. So we'll start with the Biologist Putrefier. He still lets his unit gives them lethal hits, and they crit on 5. So the whole unit in shooting and fighting is lethaling on 5-ups. And then his new rule is when his unit destroys an enemy unit with their melee attacks, he adds 6 to his objective control characteristic for just his model until the end of the game. So kind of like the Apothecary Biologist and Space Marines, once his unit finishes off a unit in close combat, it buffs up his OC value. So it's crazy. And his ranged weapon, his Hyper Blight Grenade, is pretty good. He lost his free grenades ability, which is kind of sad because that little bit of extra mortal wound output was always helpful. And Plague Marines are usually pretty close, so they're usually within that 8-inch range. But his Hyper Blight Grenades, his shooting attacks got a little bit higher strength. That's D6 attacks that hit on 3, strength 7, AP 1, 2 damage. It is blast too, so again, has a chance to get a few extra shots there. Only a 12-inch range, but pretty strong as far as how hard it hits. Moving on, we do have the Foul Blight Spawn, our buddy with the Super Flamer. So his abilities now, he does still give the fight first. So it's only one guy with this ability and per battle round can use it. That's not really a big deal, but it does also say each model can only be selected for this ability once per battle. So now he only gives the fight first to his unit once per game, which is all right. Obviously, it's nice for it to still be there, but it's not often that you need it that many more times than once. But it's a little bit of a downgrade there. However, his new ability is that enemy models cannot start or end advanced moves within 9 inches of this model. This is kind of crazy because most of the combat-specific armies now have advance and charge abilities. So being able to mess with that with 1 or 2 or 3 of these guys out on the table is going to be a huge detriment to those advance and charge armies. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. His Flamer is still really good. It's obviously D6 attacks with strength 7, AP 2, 2 damage, anti-infantry 2 up, ignoring cover. Definitely has the ability to put some damage out. And at strength 7, it can actually do some work into higher toughness vehicles and monsters too. So moving on, we do have one Lord of Contagion. This guy got a huge glow up in the codex. Wasn't used or seen very often before, but now this guy really helps his unit out quite a bit. We're going to be taking him with Deathshroud today. I know the Blight Lord Terminators got better. I'm just not running them today, but they definitely have some interesting new rules for them too. Yeah, but the Lord of Contagion, while he's leading a unit, weapons equipped by the models in the unit have Sustained Hits 1 and Lance. He gives his unit Sustained and Lance. And guess what? Deathshroud already have lethal. So when you roll 6s with Deathshroud to hit, you're getting a Sustained and a lethal, and they get Lance. That's just a big deal. And then his second rule is that when he dies, he stands back up on a 2-up with 3 wounds remaining. So that's handy when he does die. The fact that he can pop back up and still contribute to the battle is helpful. So he, of course, will be leading a 6-man brick of Deathshroud. Moving on, we have not one but 2 Lords of Virulence. So the Lord of Virulence, he was a solid choice before. Now he got better with some better rules. So he still has this rule where the unit he joins rerolls all wounds in ranged attacks. This is great for Deathshroud because their flamers, their Plague Spitter gauntlets are anti-infantry 4-up. So it just makes them a very strong shooting an Overwatch threat into infantry because it's just going to be a ton of attacks. And then his new ability now, at the start of the fight phase, not the start of the fight phase, the start of the shooting phase, he picks an enemy unit that he can see. So, start of the shooting phase, select one enemy unit within 30 inches and visible to this model. And then until the end of the phase, each time a friendly Death Guard model makes a ranged attack, they don't have to be close to him. Just any of your Death Guard models make a ranged attack that targets that unit. You reroll hit rolls of 1. If that attack is made with a blast weapon, you can reroll the whole hit roll. So this gives blast weapons like on blight launchers, and the Defiler's got a blast weapon. And of course, the Plague Burst Crawler's indirect is blast. It gives you full rerolls with blast weapons. That's kind of huge. That's kind of a big deal. And even the reroll ones to hit for everybody, all the other units is helpful too, because there haven't been very many reroll hit roll options available to Death Guard, especially just on the data sheet. So definitely handy there. Of course, his gun is pretty good. He's got a flamer that is anti-infantry 2-up with AP 1 damage, and fights all right in combat. Now his power fist got a little bit better in that now it hits on, excuse me, let me find it here. Now it hits on 2s. I think it was hitting on 3s before. So he's just a little more consistent in combat. I've got 2 of these guys today. One of them has the enhancement Shriekworm Familiar. Very simple. Once per battle round, his unit can Overwatch for free. This is great. Like I said, he really buffs the shooting attack of the Deathshroud with their flamers. So now they just get to Overwatch for free. Definitely worth it. This thing is only 15 points, I think. Yeah, it's only 15 points, so free Overwatch 2 or 3 times a game is a huge buff. And then the other Lord of Virulence will have the Tenderless Emissions enhancement. So this enhancement, very good with our vehicle-based army here. So basically it gives him lone op if he's within 3 inches of a vehicle. So kind of like a Tech Marine now, he can be lone op. And while he already gives the hit rerolls, this enhancement gives him wound rerolls of 1 for any of those vehicles within 3 inches. So we do have a Land Raider today. You know, that Land Raider's last cannons are all right, but when they're rerolling once to hit and once to wound, they just get a little bit more efficient. So, and obviously he's going to be surrounded by a bunch of vehicles today. They're going to take advantage of this, but this makes him, obviously just makes the shooting threat of his vehicles that he's going to be with that much better. Moving on, we do have a 10 mana Plague Marines. Like I said, I usually equip my Plague Marines with all close combat, all of the heavy plague weapons, and the bubonic weapons. We're not taking any of the bubonic weapons today, so we're taking 4 heavy plague weapons. The champion has a power fist and his plasma gun. His power fist now is actually a power fist, so it hits on 3s rather than 4s like the bubonic weapons, so he got slightly better. And then I'm taking 2 plasma guns in addition to that on Marines, and 2 of the blight launchers. The blight launchers are D3 blast shots now. And then I have 1 of the plague spewers too. So we've got a little bit of an Overwatch threat between the foul blight spawn and the plague spewer. But I mean, if we have the opportunity, we're going to Overwatch with our Deathshroud. But it just gives this unit a lot more of a shooting attack. And obviously the Plague Marines have a relevant rule now. The rule before was terrible, like +1 leadership on an objective they control, whatever. Now, after they shoot, they pick one of the enemy units that they hit in shooting, and that unit is now put into contagion, or what we call afflicted now. So definitely a big plus up for the Plague Marines. They're going to get a little more expensive. I think it's $190 now for a squad of 10. I think it was $180 before. Or maybe it was even $160. I don't remember. I forget. They were $190 now, but still have a pretty decent shooting threat and a good fight threat. They all, of course, went up to toughness 6 now. Relative for your strength 4, strength 5, strength 6 guns that are and attacks that are coming in at them. There's still a lot of stuff that can just do work to them because they are just 3-up armor, 2 wounds. But that little bit of toughness will be relevant here and there. All right, moving on. We do have a Chaos Land Raider that these Plague Marines are going to be riding around in. The Land Raider, its special ability is that after it moves, it can the units inside can disembark and they can still charge. Like I said, in this detachment, we have a stratagem that allows us to move through walls. So I can move that Land Raider, position it, stage it near the mid table, and then spend 1 CP to move through a wall, disembark the Plague Marines. They can get out and do some work. Other than that, there's no Death Guard specific rule for the Land Raiders. It'd be nice if it was maybe toughness 13 or something, but no, it's still the T12. Still a relatively durable tank to have in the middle here. Moving on, we got 2 6-mans of the Deathshroud Terminators. Deathshrouds, obviously they lost their neg1 to wound when they're being led by characters, but their toughness did go up to 7, so they're just toughness 7, meaning your strength 12 shooting from like las cannons and things is now wounding them on 3s rather than 2s. So you're going to miss the neg1 to wound here and there, but they did go up in wounds from 3 wounds to 4 wounds, and that's very relevant because the game does have a lot of flat 3 damage in there now. And in some of the other detachments, they have ways to reduce damage on them or ways to buff their toughness. There's not much of that in this detachment, so that's why I'm taking 2 6-mans. I think in some of the other detachments that buff the Deathshroud's combat abilities and buff their durabilities, you'd be all right with taking a 3-man with like a Lord of Contagion. They would do a whole lot of damage just like that. But in this detachment, there's no real buffs to them, so I am doing 2 full-on 6-mans just to get the work in. Now, in combat, they're really strong. Let's see here. So their strike profile is pretty good. They're 4 attacks, hitting on 2, strength 8, AP 2, 2 damage. Lethal hits all the time. If they're being led by the Lord of Contagion, it's going to be sustained. And Lance on the charge. The sweep gets really good because it's strength 4, and if you're reducing the toughness of, say, a T4 unit, it goes down to 3, and if you got Lance from the Lord of Contagion, now their sweep profile is wounding Marines on 2s, which is kind of crazy. So the sweep profile will be pretty good a lot of times, especially into like 3 wound models where you're going to lose some of that efficiency with the 2 damage ones. So I think we'll see. I think when you're playing your Deathshroud, you definitely want to look at that sweep often. Because a lot of times it's going to be worth it to go to that, considering we have the Lance on them now. Yeah, and of course they're special. They have their Plague Spurt gauntlets. They get D6 shots with their flamers. Their pistols still too. I checked that right away. They are still pistols, so if they're tied up in combat in their shooting phase, they get to flame their enemies right in their faces. And their special rule now is that when they deep strike in, now, it says when they are set up from deep strike, so I believe this does apply to rapid ingressing as well. And when they come in from reserve, when they use the deep strike rule and set up on the table, they can set up, they have to be more than 9 inches away from non-afflicted units, but they can be just 6 inches away from afflicted units. And there are a bunch of ways now in the codex to put affliction on things, but we know that in this detachment, we have the ability to do that with just the detachment rule. So that's what I'm trying to use to take advantage of today. So there we got our Deathshroud buddies. Moving on, the fetid Bloat Drones. So in the codex, the fetid Bloat Drone essentially split into 2 different data sheets. One data sheet is for the Plague Spewers or the Flesh Mower, and they have another data sheet for the Heavy Blight Launcher. This makes a little bit of sense if you want to run a ton of Bloat Drones. I don't know why they just didn't split it into 3 data sheets, because I'd love to have 9 of these guys floating around the table. But the Heavy Blight Launcher is pretty good, and because it's a separate data sheet, they can make a little bit more points. So the fetid Bloat Drone, its special rule is kind of weird. Like after it kills a unit, the unit can explode and kind of put other units into contagion that are nearby. In your shooting phase, each time this unit makes an attack that destroys an enemy unit before removing the last model in that unit from play, roll a d6, adding 1 to the result if the unit is afflicted on a 5-up. Each enemy unit within 6 inches of that model is afflicted until the start of the next turn. So if the unit I was attacking was afflicted, it'll be on a 4-up. Every unit within 6 inches rolls a d6 on a 4-up. They are now afflicted until the start of my next turn. The timing's kind of weird, but it will last through your opponent's turn. So if it's a debuff to their shooting and weapon skill, that will be relevant there as well. But the big deal here is their guns. So their Heavy Blight Launcher is d6 plus 2 shots and blast. So that means they get full rerolls from the Lord of Virulence's ability. d6 plus 2 shots, blast, hitting on 3s, strength 10, AP 2, flat 3 damage. Flat 3 damage is great. Strength 10 is really good too, especially if you can put a T10 unit into affliction and bring them down to 9. Then you'll be wounding them on 3s. AP 2 is relevant when you are shooting at something that you've reduced the armor save on. So just a a pretty good shooting unit. Today we've got 3 of them. We're gonna try them out. I went out. I didn't have to do a whole lot to build up my Death Guard army for the new codex, but I did have to go out and get 3 bloat drones with the heavy blight launchers because they're the only variant that I did not have. So we added these guys to the roster today. Then I've got 2 myphitic blight haulers. These guys got better. So it used to be that they got +1 to wound into vehicles. Now it's +1 to wound into vehicles and monsters, and +1 to hit into vehicles and monsters. Just making them a lot more efficient and trying to do some work to those, especially strength 9 on their meltas and their crack missiles means a T10 vehicle that we get afflicted and get down to toughness 9, and then getting +1 to wound is going to put it wounding on 3s. And if they're taking advantage of the Lord of Virulence, rerolling 1s when you're hitting on 2s is pretty good, and rerolling 1s when you get +1 to wound is good from that enhancement. So got these out today, a couple of these on the table. And finally, most importantly, the best new boys in the galaxy, we got a squad of Poxwalkers, just 1 10-man of Poxwalkers. I really should have more Chaos Spawn and Poxwalkers in this list, but Chaos Spawn are 80 points and 1 myphitic blight hauler is 90 points. So I figured I'd just run more vehicles. They move 10 inches. They can get out there. I do need more scoring units if I was running a truly competitive list. But for now, we've got 1 squad of Poxwalkers. They do have infiltrate, and that's about it. They're just 10 guys that infiltrate. They have a 5 up feel no pain, so they're a little bit resilient to 1 damage attacks. But other than that, they're just there to spread contagion, spread Nurgle's love, and that's the list. As I said, I should probably have more scoring units like Chaos Spawn and Poxwalkers in the list here. But today we're running the vehicle detachment, so I wanted to put as many vehicles as I could in there. And like I said, a squad of 2 spawn is 80 points, but a myphitic blight hauler is 90 points. So the blight hauler moves 10 inches. It's pretty durable. I did try the spawn off. The Death Guard spawner can eat because they're toughness 7. They just get a lot more durable. But yeah, that's what we're working with today. So the scoring units are going to be some of these smaller vehicles, blight haulers, bloat drones. I want their damage output as much as possible. But when I need to, when I pull an action-based secondary, I can use those. And then, like I said, I just going to run that Land Raider right through a wall and throw some Plague Marines out of it and get them in close to do some damage and do some fighting there. So I'm excited to see if that actually gets to happen today. The World Eaters are going to be coming out at me, so I might not need to do that. I don't know. It might not be the best test for that. Might have to try that into an army that actually kind of wants to hide from me. But other than that, I really want to see how the Plague Marines do with some shooting. I want to see how our new Lord of Virulence enhancement buffs the shooting vehicles around him. It's only a 3-inch order, so it is pretty close to make a really tight little unit with him and the vehicles gathered around him. And then, of course, let's just see how the Deathshroud do today. Like I said, this detachment doesn't really have any stratagems or anything that buffs their combat output, although we do have the enhancements. Going to give one of them free Overwatch with the Lord of Virulence, so that'll be fun. But that's it. That's the list. Follow me over to the battle report. Let's see how the new Death Guard do into the new World Eaters. All right. Have a good one.